From the library of the New York Stock Exchange at the corner of Wall and Broad Streets in New York City, you're inside the Ice House, our podcast from Intercontinental Exchange on markets, leadership, and vision in global business. The dream drivers that have made the NYSE an indispensable institution of global growth for over 225 years. Each week, we feature stories of those who hatch plans, create jobs, and harness the engine of capitalism. Right here, right now at the NYSE and at ICE's 12 exchanges and 6 clearinghouses around the world. And now welcome inside the Ice House. Here's your host, Josh King of Intercontinental Exchange.
A few weeks ago, here in the library of the NYSE, I was talking to Denny Hamlin, the 61st winner of the Daytona 500, about what it takes to win the Great American Race. Of the 43 cars running, their engines consumed a collective 5,375 gallons of racing fuel from start to finish. But what does it take to keep the engines of global capitalism running around the world every workday? Our stock, derivatives, and futures exchanges are, together, one of the planet's most complex networks of machines and pure computer power, making the winning car at Daytona look like a tortoise compared with the speed at which the exchange must operate flawlessly. In a global marketplace, exchange groups bear the responsibility to be high-performing and fully operational, regardless of market conditions, weather conditions, or any unforeseen business impact you might imagine. Intercontinental Exchange earned its stripes for being at the forefront of the technological innovation. At the New York Stock Exchange, it's managed to not only stand the test of time, but to evolve along with it. In a world where activity is measured in microseconds, which, to be clear, is 1/1,000,000th of a second, efficiency, high performance, and most importantly, resiliency are non-negotiable table stakes to compete in a global marketplace. Judging by the faces of the people here and the uniforms they wear, the NYSE is certainly a different place than it once was. In the elevators, you're just as likely to bump into a mathematics PhD or a computer engineer as a trader. And that's why today's discussion focuses on the technology behind ICE's 12 exchanges, 6 clearinghouses, and the company's rapidly growing data services business called, appropriately enough, ICE Data Services. It's a wide-ranging topic, which is why we're making room in the Ice House for not one, but 3 special guests. Mayur Kapani, Chief Technology Officer at ICE, Sridhar Masam, Head of Technology at the New York Stock Exchange, and Alexey Lebedev, Chief Software Architect at the NYSE. Their career arcs have all led Mayur, Sridhar, and Alexey to their responsibilities, designing the state-of-the-art technology that has transformed global markets, and each has played a role in helping Intercontinental Exchange position itself as a leader in financial technology. CTOs and tech geeks out there, strap on your seatbelts and start your engines. We're going out for a fast ride on the technology frontier, building the exchange of the 21st century. Our conversation with Mayur, Sridhar, and Alexey right after this.
Tencent Music Entertainment Group is the largest online music entertainment group in China. We operate the 4 largest online music apps, including the social entertainment part. We are serving more than 800 million users. The user experience on TME platform is extremely great. I look forward to have a long-term partnership with New York Stock Exchange. Tencent Music Entertainment Group is now listed on New York Stock Exchange.
When it comes to building, operating, and overseeing the technology that allows an exchange to process more than 100,000 messages in the blink of an eye, where do you begin? Sitting across from me are the engineers tasked with making that magic happen. The 3 of them just blinked their eyes 3 1/3 times. That's 1,000,000 more messages in the lifespan of an exchange. Mayur Kapani joined ICE as Vice President of Trading Technology in 2006 from the Philadelphia Stock Exchange and was named Chief Technology Officer in 2016. Sridhar Masam joined the NYSE in 2002 from the Pacific Stock Exchange, which is now a part of NYSE Arca. He was instrumental in building the exchange's current tech platform and was named Head of NYSE Technology in June 2018. Alexey Lebedev, Chief Software Architect, joined the NYSE in 2013 from Algo Engineering, the company which he co-founded. ICE bought Algo Engineering in 2014 to drive the NYSE's stock and options market. And with so much of that effort substantially and successfully implemented, a technologist like Alexey naturally looks to new adventures in computer coding and software development, which is why this conversation for him serves as both a retrospective on the work achieved, a meditation on some of the work ahead, and a swan song of sorts from the NYSE as he prepares, with our deep gratitude, to follow new pursuits a few months from now. Sridhar and Alexey only had to travel down a couple flights of stairs to get here, but Mayur, you're in town from the ICE headquarters in Atlanta. As I mentioned in the introduction, you've all come from different walks of life, have taken very different educational paths, and are even from different regions of the world, but you've come together through your FinTech expertise. Let's start there. How did each of you wend your way into a career in technology? Mayur.
To start, I actually started working for a retail banking software platform where I was tasked with programming ATM machines.
In the US?
In the Far East, Malaysia, Indonesia, China. I was working for Citicorp Software, a division of Citibank. And from there, I landed in the US based on my skills of programming the ATM machines, where in a Philadelphia Stock Exchange at that time, I was told that I had to take all these electronic orders and route them to different printers on the floor. And that's how I got started there. And then from there, that system evolved to be a fully electronic system. ISE had come about then, where they were trading options electronically. And Philly, that was one of the smaller exchanges at that time, to save itself from extinction, decided that they needed to turn fully electronic. And I was part of a journey where we moved from a electronic floor-based system to a more hybrid and an electronic system that traded options and competed with the likes of ISE and CBOE.
Was technology always in the Kapani family business?
No. I come from a family background in accounting and finance, and the word engineering was not well understood. And it just so happened that I was one of the few guys who decided to study, got interested, and went to a technical school, Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, and studied mechanical engineering. And that's how I started my journey in the technology area.
Did you make your parents proud?
I think so. So I think it was interesting. My dad, initially when I decided to go and do engineering, he said, "Do you really want to do engineering? You're not going to make a lot of money." He was a tax and a finance consultant, so he was always telling me that, you know what, you go where the money is and not where you have to first learn a lot of things to make money. So I kind of decided to go the other way, and I'm glad I did, because I really enjoy what I do, and it's a lot of fun.
On that move from the Philadelphia Stock Exchange, was trying to get to the United States a definite goal, or could you have applied your engineering trade anywhere on the planet and have been happy?
Moving to United States was simply because that's where I got the opportunity. It was just before year 2000. There was a huge demand in the US for engineers. It just so happened that the technology I was working with, a fault-tolerant platform, at that time was in high demand, and Philadelphia Stock Exchange was one that needed that engineering, and I landed up there.
Sridhar, how did your path differ?
I started in 1997, right after graduating college, at a company called Cognizant Technology Solutions. It's still a listed company today, in Chennai, in South India. And they recruited me off campus. And I was assigned to work on, my first project was to work for the Pacific Stock Exchange. They were a client of Cognizant at the time. So I moved here in 1998. I worked there for a couple of years as a consultant to that company. Then I tried 4 different startups during the dot-com era, being in the Bay Area at the time. And then once the bubble burst, I went back to Exchange, where we did similar to other options exchange at the time. It's a hybrid platform. We re-platformed the COBOL mainframe-based system into a Java-based platform that I'm running on Windows servers using SQL Server database. To various acquisitions, NYSE Arca, NYSE, ICE, I'm here in New York now.
Was that work for Cognizant at the Pacific Stock Exchange your first time in San Francisco, or had you done other business there?
No,
before?
that was my first time. I just worked out of college 8 months in India, and that was my first assignment here in US.
Did Silicon Valley blow your mind, or would you take it all in stride?
It did. And that was one of the things where the COBOL at the time was more of an extinct type of language, and I kind of retooled myself with Java, and then that's where I went to work for different startups with the web technology at the time, and then came back to the exchange, built a Java-based trading platform.
There's perhaps no greater time to be a computer scientist and to be exploring and pioneering the capabilities of machine learning. Alexey, as your time at the NYSE nears its conclusion, after so much good work here behind you, what areas of coding and continued advancement in this space pique your interest? Any thoughts on where you'll lend your focus next?
Well, that's a great question. I guess it's one that I've been asking myself, and I will probably have to continue to ask myself after I go. I don't have any specific plans at the moment. I'm basically trying to keep the field open. But I will almost certainly go back to working on the compiler technologies. For Algo M2, I wrote a compiler that helped manufacture, in a sense, the code, because the secret kind of to low latency is to simply construct the code without any glue that comes from using third-party libraries. And to do that in the short amount of time that you typically have to build all the features that you need, you just need a special tool. And such tools exist, various stages of software construction. There are compilers. So the compiler that, in a way, powers Pillar and generates 95% of all the code that executes in production is an example of such a tool. And I've been asking myself, for instance, could you write a compiler that would build an entire distributed application from just a single source file, so that you would write something and it would automatically scale to all these machines and you wouldn't have to code that by hand? I don't know the answer to that, and maybe it would take a couple of years to explore that area, but I think it might be very interesting. Essentially, come up with a transactional application as a demo app.
Millions of people watch the opening bell of the NYSE on CNBC every morning. Millions more watch the crawl of data on the lower third of their screens, quoted prices for ETFs, Brent crude, gold, coffee, and thousands of other commodities, futures, and derivatives. There's an engine that keeps all of it straight, this computer-aided thinking. Mayur, tell us what's happening behind the curtain, all of you.
Behind the curtain, okay. In terms of what we do every day, well, every day is paranoia. What is going to break every day is figuring out, okay, we're going to put new things in that is going to help provide a new feature or a new functionality to the customer. Have we done it right? Have we done it in such a way that it will be useful? What will customers feel about it when they see it? So a lot of anxiety, a lot of paranoia, and then the wait for the thrill when it goes live. First thrill is nothing broke. And the second thrill is, okay, now we have created something useful that is going to make a big difference to the markets and our customer base. So behind the curtain, a lot of that happens. And also, a lot of work goes into planning, thinking, and figuring out what are the next areas or what incremental or non-incremental disruptive change we're going to try to attack next as technologists that's going to make a big difference to the way we do business.
So Andy Grove kind of had it right with only the paranoid survive if you're Mayur Kapani.
Yeah, here it's a little more than that. Not only the paranoid survive. In our case, your job survives only when it stays up. So for all of us, we take great pride in running super mission critical platforms. And if we can't keep that running every day, all day, then we are not fit for this job. So we really have, I think, a unique personality or you can say malfunction in our thinking to be able to do this job and sleep well.
Sridhar, Alexey, give me some scale of this that Mayur just described, that you're paranoid throughout the day, but what is actually happening that you're watching this stew continue to reverberate from the beginning of trading until the close?
Sure. Maybe for the listeners, I should describe what the exchange, what an exchange looks like, just in terms of its sort of scale. maybe 35 miles northwest of Manhattan is an enormous data center with several floors of machines. In one hall of this data center, 100 servers occupying maybe the space of 2 or 3 refrigerators with 2,000 processors inside are processing roughly 3 billion instructions each second each. So that's several trillion instructions per second. And connected to this computing core are several hundred cables over which bytes traverse back and forth, representing orders and acknowledgments and trades. And the job of a creator of an exchange is basically to specify to each of these thousands of processors what to do at any moment in time. And once you've specified that, you walk away and you're not allowed to touch it. And if it goes down in flames, you're just an observer and you're gonna regret it. So you have to be pretty sure up front that nothing unexpected can happen. So there's a special art to that.
And just before anything goes out of flames, Alexi makes sure that we already have double and triple backup that takes up automatically, just to be clear.
That's part of that art.
So between our equity and options markets, on a given day, a peak volume, we do around 75 billion messages. We're processing around 1 million messages a second within tens of microseconds of latencies from order entry to customer acknowledgement. Again, just to add to what Mayur said, it's every day, every weekend, every day the opening and closing is crucial for us in terms of smooth opening of the markets, smooth closing, and make sure that we do a lot of effort on weekends to make sure the Monday, any new releases, installations, we come up clean on Monday.
And these volumes and this scale is not declining. It is ever growing. Mayur, you joined ICE in 2006, at which point it was still a relatively unknown Atlanta-based energy exchange that was starting to make some marquee acquisitions of historic trading venues such as the International Petroleum Exchange and the NYBOT. Little did you know the biggest challenge was yet to come, but start by telling us how you developed your acquisition muscle through those earlier deals, and then we'll get to the big buy of the big board and the deal that brought the NYSE within the ICE fold in 2013. But there you are in 2006, and you're now going to go on a binge of acquisitions. How do you, as a technologist, build the muscle to be able to do that?
In hindsight, 2006, I had no clue in terms of what I was getting into. When I joined the ICE, I was part of an options exchange, and at that time, ICE was a small company in Atlanta that was doing OTC trading of power and natural gas, and was just we had just got into the IPE, where we were trying to convert it a full electronic platform from a manual floor-based platform. And we started seeing the volumes. And one of the remits I had going in was, let us leverage all the learning and everything that has been done by especially the US equity exchanges and equity option exchanges in terms of building scalable infrastructures and apply this to the derivatives trading. Going forward, we started to look more and more like exchanges, and Jeff's playbook was we wanted to convert all the manual processes that were associated with trading, where there were floors and chats and other ways and means by which buyers and sellers got together, into more electronic and more efficient form of using the internet and the accessibility that was available through it to do get a lot more people into this, and also ability to distribute it much more globally, make them more global markets. So IPE, New York Board of Trade, we invested used our core muscle in technology to scale and make those markets global. We also, at that point, started building a clearinghouse by starting with the clearing platform that we acquired as part of New York Board of Trade, and launched the first UK clearinghouse in 100 years. We also acquired, at that point, a chat platform that was an early on chat platform that had a network of traders who used to chat and trade gas options, and built out that platform and connected it and made it more electronic. All the workflows and processes that were related to it made it much more electronic and digitized it such that we could bring in a lot more efficiencies into the trading of those instruments.
Sridhar, what was the opportunity that brought you across the country from the Pacific Stock Exchange to right here at the corner of Wall and Broad?
In 2014 and mid of 2014, Pillar at the time Project Abby was the one which brought me to New York. I was asked to move here to lead the Pillar initiative. And most of my career I have been building technology platforms, high capacity, low latency, high throughput systems, primarily in the exchange space. And with each one of those re-platforms, we went through many challenges and learned a lot of lessons. And one of the things which we did with Pillar is to apply all those lessons learned and try to build a platform of the future, addressing all the concerns, issues we had in the past.
And Sridhar, the status of the Pillar project at this point?
So we have NYSE ARCA, NYSE American, NYSE National, NYSE TAPE's PNC markets rolled out onto Pillar. This year, we are targeting NYSE Taipei as well as CHX, our new exchange, onto the Pillar platform. And we continue to build out on the Pillar options this year, along with Pillar SIP, which is replacing our SIP with the Pillar technology.
What's the SIP?
It's a securities information processor. This is an entity owned by multiple exchanges. It's a committee of its own, which is taking information or top of the book or code from all exchanges and aggregates and be that center point where everybody can see everybody's prices, every exchange's prices, meet intermediate aggregation point for all the exchanges for every stock.
Yeah, and I think this is a good example, Josh, where we have taken the core technology, which has worked really successfully for us in a particular area, and we are using it and leveraging it much more extensively in our other platforms. And going, as Sridhar mentioned, we are re-platforming the whole SIP, which is now based on 10, 15-year-old thinking on architecture, to a much more modern, much more efficient and compact, low latency platform, which we have built over the past few years.
At what point, for any of you, do you declare the Pillar project fully completed, or is it constantly reinventing itself and finding new applications to build onto it, or reducing the latency even further?
I would say it's both. I mean, it's never done. We are finding our market data systems. We're trying to bring it onto Pillar. So we already have our order entry gateways, along with our matching engines onto this platform. So it's ever evolving, and we have continuous R&D looking at various technologies, how that can be augmented with Pillar, be it new hardware, be it change in architecture and design, constantly evolve the platform and try to make it more of a platform that can be leveraged across multiple applications. And we're trying to get into parts of Pillar to be more of an open source where people can start contributing and using it.
Well, I'll put my hat in terms of thinking about Pillar. For me, the biggest benefits, or at least the value we've seen, is ability to develop and test very reliably, very low latency platform. And the other thing is the resiliency of Pillar to be able to do at this scale. It's unparalleled in my mind. And these things are the ones, putting a CTO hat, are the ones I'm looking for on all my platforms. So anywhere where it makes sense for us in terms of applying this technology, we are leveraging it to the hilt.
So Alexey, why is now the right time to hand off what you've done at the NYSE? How will it feel to let go of the super fast machine that you've helped to build?
I mean, one way I would answer it is by trying to maybe lessen the drama a little bit, because I'm not disappearing. And I know the team that I've been working with very well, and I'm going to continue to interact with them. In a way, I'm not going to another exchange. I'm just going back to sort of the simpler things that I have been doing and that I enjoy doing a lot, sort of building the tools that then allow you to create an application. I guess the reason it's the right time is, look, I mean, I've been working on this for almost 10 years. A lot has happened in these 10 years. There are new things that you can build. We have 4 markets on Pillar, and I just had to make a call at some point. I didn't want this to be 3 years from now. I didn't want to just continue going in the same exact direction for so long.
Pillar is in good hands, though, you think, as you get ready to move on to your next chapter?
I think it's in very good hands. I mean, I could go on and on about all the software quality methods that we've innovated in this team and the great people that are on it. So I don't have a doubt that it will perform solidly 10 years from now.
So Mayur, as a whole, we know that ICE employs about 5,000 people around the world. How many engineers doing what kinds of jobs keep this engine that we're talking about, building the exchange of the 21st century?
Let me just talk about it in general from our technology perspective. So we have about 1,700 engineers overall. And if you take our operations staff that monitors and manages the technology, we have about another 1,500 to 2,000 folks. We are a large technology organization, and our product is kind of manifests itself in technology in terms of all our products are listed on computers, and all our products are accessed through computers. Our products are accessed through networks all over the world. So our whole product structure is completely realized in technology. So technology plays a major part in our product development, in our way we serve our products to customers.
Where do you find the best people to join these ranks? I mean, what does it take to be able to be one of these technologists that can operate at the speed and resiliency and sort of level of paranoia that you started talking about in the first place? Where do you find them? It's
a very interesting question. For me, the most people I find people in many different areas, and there are people who are passionate about a particular technology and want to apply it to this scale. So number one, we find those kinds of folks. The other folks are people who have a strong interest in the financial domain, want to understand how the markets work, want to understand how to make them work, and want to put in their effort to learn about the technology to make it work. So we find people who are deeply technical or deeply passionate about the markets, the ones who are most successful here. And our average tenure, if you look at across all our employees, is about 7 years. Most people who join us like to stay, even from the acquisitions we've done in the past. It starts all the way from people with bachelor's and master's degrees wanting to get into the financial field to people with experience in other markets, especially in technology, and want to try their hand in applying that technical knowledge to a problem of our scale.
I mean, in many industries, Alexey, it's survival of the fittest. What qualities would you look for in someone looking to carry on the work that you've done here at the NYSE?
I think mainly it's just liking software. Software is complicated and it requires a certain skill set that's independent of the industry that you're in. Because software is nothing more than some sort of logical construct. And as we all know, the more you add things, the more there are chances for things to break. And so what makes successful software is the same set of skills regardless of where you are, aerospace, in exchange technology, or in web applications. It's some sort of logical rigor and adherence to sort of good principles and rules. I would say liking software, liking to build software is that criterion.
As you reflect on everything you've done here at the NYSE, looking back, what surprised you the most during various parts of your tenure?
I'll give you an answer that is slightly off topic. When you enter the NYSE lobby, there is a little museum of sorts which has machines like the original ticker plant, which is essentially a mechanical device, sort of a telegraph with, I guess, some motor attached to it for printing quotes to a tape. And there's also a palm device, which I guess was used on the floor to enter quotes and trades. And what surprised me is that there is no physical manifestation of a modern piece of software. So when someone enters that room, they can certainly see in some proximal sense what was what were people thinking in the 19th century, but they can't see what they were thinking in the 21st century. So one of the ideas that I've had, and maybe some of the listeners who have more time will take this idea up, is write a program that reads the control flow graph of a piece of software and generates a 3D model that corresponds to it, and then print this 3D model using one of the industrial 3D printing methods, so that you can get a visual sense. For a simple program like Hello World, you would just get, a simple printout. And for a more complicated model, like, let's say, the New York Stock Exchange matcher, you will get, you'll get something much bigger and more intricate. And it would be very interesting just to see what it looks like.
Mayur, I assume you're hiring now. What kind of people are you looking for?
So I think for us, there is a technology side of it in terms of there is some core skill sets we need for these platforms, which we need for low latency, like C++, or working on large data sets and working on platforms like Hadoop. So those are the platforms, those are from the technology standpoint, we are looking for those kinds of people. Then we also have a whole set of applications that are serving customers through the net and accessible through the net. And those, again, are Java technologies and technologies with HTML5. So all these standard set of technologies where anybody who's interested, obviously we have a lot more job openings in that area. But more than the technology, we also would like people who really are hungry to learn about the markets and would like to solve problems to this scale. Clearly, all these technologies are not unique in the sense they are used in a lot of industries, but the way they are applied in our kind of an environment, somebody needs to have that passion and wanting to do it to this scale and be part of this journey.
Sridhar, where do you get your best people from?
Again, to Mayur's point, I think, again, bachelor's or master's in computer science or electronics is where we have success from. We have people from telecommunications background who have been pretty successful in our areas as well, and with financial background as well.
So in any function, the top practitioners debate the key issues of the day. What are the hot button topics in technology right now in the circles that you guys travel in? What are people talking about?
So at least in the world I deal with, people talk about how to deal with large amount of data. Specifically, not just taking the data and storing it somewhere, but how to actually use it in a meaningful way. So that's whether you call it AI machine learning, whether you call it big data tools to do ad hoc queries, that's one big area I hear, in terms of what people are trying to do. The other area where people are trying to do in terms of in our circles is, we've seen the Intel's or general decrease in the CPU's clock cycles, where every 18 months we used to see a CPU power double. That has slowed down considerably. So now people have come up with much more creative ideas in building special chips that implement certain algorithms and how to parallelize those algorithms across large number of cores that are limited by the amount of cycles you can put on a core. So that's one more area. One other area where we see a lot of innovation is bandwidth, in terms of figuring out ways to push more and more through our pipes and creating bigger pipes. And all these areas clearly are near and dear to our heart in terms of the problems we need to solve. So those are the areas where, at least in my world, the things I worry about and try to look for the next disruption.
Walking onto the trading floor, Sridhar, it's impossible to ignore the sound of electronic buzzers and beepers, even the constant hum of technology powering the machinery that runs our equities market. On average, NYSE Group trades more than 1.7 billion shares per day. But make the case for our listeners as to why the NYSE is a tech company and not simply a financial organization.
At its core, NYSE is a technology organization by the way of how customers interact and trade with us. Every aspect of our trading systems is built on technology, be it order entry gateways, be it market data systems, be it web portals for customer to access, even the technology on the trading floor for the DMMs as well as floor brokers, it starts from a listed company, from an IPO, all the way. The technology is for them to actually do all the regulatory obligations as a listed company. Everything is provided through technology. There's a web portal called Listings Manager for listed companies to kind of fulfill their obligations. So every aspect of interaction with NYSE is through technology.
Mayur, one of your many duties is to lead technology diligence on the company's acquisitions. And last year, we completed our acquisition of fixed income marketplace TMC bonds and trading platform BondPoint, which positions ICE as the leader in electronic trading in the fixed income market, now called ICE bonds. Can you take us through your part of the due diligence process on evaluating these potential acquisitions?
Sure. So we've done a lot of acquisitions, and ICE general business strategy hinges on finding companies that are a good fit, are complementing us in terms of a specific product or technology, and can be distributed to our network of customers. So as you look at the two bond platforms we acquired last year, like in all other cases of acquisitions, the business side kind of convinces themselves that the product set is a good fit business strategy and it fits it well into our business strategy. And once that due diligence is done, it comes to the technology side. And on the technology side, we start looking at, okay, what are the key technologies used in the platform? What is the security posture? What is the skill sets of the teams that are working on those platforms? Then we form a view based on the platforms and skill sets and how we want the integrated product to look like from the customer standpoint, how we are going to evolve the platforms. So that becomes the focus of the due diligence, figuring out all these elements so that they become part of the ICE technology family.
And generally speaking, that muscle for integrating these technologies and doing these acquisitions is far more evolved for you in 2018 than it was 12 years ago, 2006, when you first joined.
I think what really built our muscle was 2013 acquisition of New York Stock Exchange with the multitude of platforms. And obviously we tested it again in 2015 when we bought the IDC data platforms, which had a multitude of data platforms and technologies which we needed to integrate and harmonize.
Just taking a quick trip back to 2012, 2013, you get on a plane from Atlanta, show up at this place at 11 Wall Street. What strikes you immediately about the challenge at hand?
You go into a place with 200 years of history. I started appreciating a lot more what important role NYSE was playing, and to take care and be the custodian of such an institution, how much you had to be very thoughtful and figure out not only in terms of the business side, how we're going to run the business, but also from the technology side, how we're going to integrate the technologies and the people such that we have no disruptions and we don't impact the markets in any significant ways.
And it still is job one. After the break, Mayur, Sridhar, and Alexey and I talk about the latest technology inside 11 Wall Street and the tech advancements about to come down the pipeline as we build the exchange of the 21st century. That's right, after this.
Spirit Airlines is a ultra low-cost carrier in the United States that is intended to democratize travel, provide low fares and high-quality service for the people in the continental 48 and Latin America. We offer a very, very low fare, and in exchange for that, you get an on-time performance that can't be beat. You know, our growth has really catapulted us to this point, and we're extremely proud to be a partner with NYSE. Spirit Airlines, listed on the New York Stock Exchange.
Back now with Mayur Kapani, Sridhar Masam, and Alexey Lebedev, part of the team of masterminds behind ICE's technology infrastructure. We've been discussing building the exchange of the 21st century and the paths to ICE that Mayur, Sridhar, and Alexey each took to find themselves in a position to be doing just that. 2015, we mentioned before the break, ICE acquired financial market data and analytics provider Interactive Data Corporation, IDC, for $5.2 billion. You said that this marked a new chapter for technology and development and integration for ICE. How?
First is, traditionally, we were running exchanges and clearinghouses. A lot of the data we generated was our own proprietary data, which we created channels for distribution. With IDC, we got into, and before that, even that super derivatives in 2014, that was our first foray into getting into a market data platform. We started becoming the source for lot of evaluations. With IDC, these were fixed income evaluations. With super derivatives, which we got in, they were OTC derivatives, pricing and evaluations. So that was a new business we got into. And the next big thing we did is we started consuming large amount of data from exchanges all over the world, aggregating it and creating all kinds of derived products and valuations and distributing it over many, many forms like APIs, files, through a messaging medium where we would distribute these messages on the wires and customers would consume it. So we got into a completely new business with much bigger footprint in terms of the sources and the delivery channels through which we distributed this data.
It's the availability of data that really is what all customers want. Ben Jackson, the president of Intercontinental Exchange, and Lynn Martin, the president of ICE Data Services, have said about the importance of meeting and exceeding customer demand on this podcast. In earlier episodes, you've also stressed the importance of understanding and focusing on the needs of ICE's customers, stating, customers want and need data anytime, anywhere, so it's important to be able to access data across multiple devices. What's the process to recognize those needs and then integrate it into the technology that ICE is building out?
I think instead of saying devices, I would say multiple channels, depending on who you are. If you are a direct customer that is trading a given product, you are a listed company who is looking for information on that company and everything that is happening in terms of news and transcripts and fundamentals and all that analysis. You have different customers have different needs, and we work really hard to provide channels that is best suited to their needs, be in the form of an API, be it in the form of a front end or a GUI, where the front end itself is delivered on their desktop, or front end is delivered, right amount of information is delivered on their mobile. There are cases where customers are looking only for a specific set of analytics. They are not looking for raw data. So we try to do all these things where we slice and dice the data, identify the right delivery channels, and make sure we can serve the customers with what they need in the most efficient way. We don't want to give them data more than what they need and make it expensive for them in terms of their bandwidth, storage, or any other means by which they consume the data. So we go through this process of identifying the customer segments and figuring out what segment is looking for what data and how we can best serve that customer segment.
The company acquired instant messaging platform Yellow Jacket, now operating as ICE Chat, in 2008. Instrumental in its recent development is the use of artificial intelligence. How does an IM platform for traders incorporate AI into its platform, and where else can AI be found in ICE or NYSE technology?
Yes, it's very interesting. When we acquired Yellow Jacket, one of the things that was appealing for us, it was actually started by two folks from MIT, and it was a very good idea where they were taking in a lot of text, which is basically they understood the lingo of the traders, even in a given market segment, and using that lingo, they started creating grids and also valuation models for options where they would read and understand and learn all these texts or that were being exchanged between the different traders and try to create some meaning out of it. And for that, the technology behind the AI technology in terms of parsing text is fairly well developed and was fairly well developed. But what they did unique was the fact that they converted that lingo into a structured set of instruments so that they could provide the traders with much more context. They could provide the traders where they could hook in those texts coming in to the valuation models that would give them a price, and it helped them really scale a given trader, really scale in terms of number of quotes and number of prices they could give to anybody who was looking to trade with them. There was a good example where we took that technology, used their algorithms or AI, enhanced it, where we expanded the number of instruments significantly, where we took the outputs of some of those parsing recognition, we call it internally, text, and hooked up all our data sources so that we could give the traders much more contextual information of what was happening in that instrument. And we also integrated this into a lot of our front-end tools like WebIce and IceBlock, where the listed markets and the chat markets were all integrated on one screen and helped traders and companies make much more effective decisions on how to price all these derivative instruments. So this is one good example where we have leveraged AI to the hilt. Another area where we are exploring, even though we haven't had as much success, and we continue to look at this, is automatically parsing the bond prospectus and trying to find structured data in those bond prospectus such that we can automatically create reference data for a new bond or a new issue and use that as part of our reference data offering.
Sridhar, as the head of NYSE technology, you oversee the operations behind our exchanges and ensure that we're constantly updating and growing the technology that we provide to our brokers and traders. And now, I've heard some people describe the ambitious Pillar project as like trying to change the tires of a bus that it's careening at full speed down the Autobahn without letting it slow down to a stop. Can you and Alexi tell me about some of the challenges that the NYSE has faced in updating and introducing this new state-of-the-art technology platform?
When you say NYSE technology or trading systems, we have multiple applications to start with. We have order entry or customer-facing gateways. We have ticker plans, which is reading in market data from away markets. We have proprietary market data systems. We publish market data. We have reference data systems. We have command and control tools. We have web portals. They're all distinct technologies working together, making a trading platform. So with the Pillar, in the early phases of Pillar, upgrade was to replace the matching engines part. At a high level, it takes buy orders and sell orders and matches them at a given price, and disseminates the trades to the respective parties, customers. So our core mission with Pillar was to actually start how do we replace the core matching engine and still keeping all the other peripheral systems to minimize the impact on customers, at the same time maximizing the efficiency of our new platform. So some of the challenges, which one is just keeping just everything else the same and just the matching engine new. There's a compatibility issues or things which we need to address. How are they compatible? How the new platform is compatible with existing peripheral systems? That's one key aspect. The performance of the new platform is much better. That impacts the performance it exposes the limitations of the peripheral systems. It's a combination of how do you maintain that balance in rolling out a new system while integrating with an existing system. So that's part of the challenges we had faced. And
Alexi, I think it was your metaphor about changing the wheels of the bus moving full speed.
I think the biggest challenge in doing something like a project of this size is simply things that have been running for a while tend to have a lot of parts that are not necessarily documented. They're simply known to have worked yesterday, and if you don't touch it, they're going to work today. But if you touch it, it might break, and nobody really knows where that sensitive part is that you're not supposed to touch. As you can imagine, with 1,000 such parts, it creates a real sort of hurdle to replacing a legacy system. And as far as I know, a project of this size has not been done ever in a financial industry. You usually have one company acquiring another, and the other company has maybe better technology, and then they just decide to replace A with B. But this sort of piecewise replacement of a very large established system with something new, to me that was a surprise when I sort of realized the scope of that. And eventually I sort of admitted that it's necessary to do it in this sort of very, very slow, piecewise way. But once it is in, it is so well established, and there are so many people connected to it, and there are so many things that the system does for various participants in the sense that they rely on it, right? That it's actually very satisfying to see these things being installed and being operated.
One perspective I can add, we talked about Pillar, but we also, if you look at in general how we upgrade our technologies, because our customers, we have a large network of customers that connect to all our platforms. These customers, we don't want to do a big bang and impact them in a negative way. They are relying on us to do their day-to-day business, be it the hedgers who are trying to use our derivatives markets, or be the brokers and others who connect to us on the NYSE, trading firms who connect to us on the NYSE. They rely on us to run their business. So we have to be very thoughtful in terms of what we change for them on any given time. And we have to be also very thoughtful on making sure that we have done adequate testing before it goes live so that it doesn't materially impact them. And also exercise a rollback or practice a rollback in case something does go wrong. All of this means that it puts a structural limitation on number of components we can change at any given time, and also puts a limitation on how long it will take us to do some testing or a change before it goes live in production. So to Sridhar's points and Alexey's points, right, this was the most challenging thing we did, along with some of the other migrations like we did. We converted from a live platform to an ICE platform on the derivatives side in 2014. We did the launch of the NYSE Arca, where we went from an old platform to a new platform, few symbols at a time, communicating with customers to make sure that everybody was in sync with us and minimizing any kind of impact it had on the exchange or their business.
And sometimes real-world events from outside the building also intervene. I wanted to go through a day where like an unexpected news cycle can send the market soaring or causing it to drop dramatically. I'm thinking of a day like November 9th, 2016. That's the day after President Trump was elected. Let's take a listen to how the trading floor was reacting that day.
And countdown to the closing bell, anchor Liz Clayman, who's there on the floor of the stock exchange. And Liz, what are those guys telling you right now?
This is really interesting, isn't it, Trish? Because overnight, I'm sure you got the same calls. What's going to happen to my 401k? The futures are down 800 points. Well, it sure is interesting. Given a few hours to absorb all of the news, the markets are fine right now. We are looking at a gain of 229 points for the Dow Jones Industrials. More importantly, we are now less than 100 points away from an all-time point close here at 18,562, all-time high, 36 rather. So we're seeing real gains here in most sectors of healthcare, financials. Financials are hitting 9-month highs right now, Trish. Air is coming out of gold. Of course, overnight gold spiked about $50, so all the gold bugs got excited. But right now, things seem to be very positive, but I've been talking to traders here. They're saying it just looks a little too cute and buttoned up. You never know.
Well, sure, you never.
18,000 seems like a lifetime ago, Sridhar. Now we are back into a period of volatility, and yet we're between 25 and 26,000. How do you ensure that markets can operate optimally every day, but even more importantly, on a day like that or the day after Brexit, when you know the messages are going to spike?
Our commitment to quality, it starts early on in the development process, where we emphasize on code quality, writing tests, covering new lines of code reviews, our continuous integration pipeline. For every code change, we test 4 hours of tests. We run 100,000 test cases, stability tests, failure recognition performance tests, as part of the capacity and performance management team. So we actually stress test all these systems. We know the limitations, limits of all these systems, the performance degradation at a certain level, and how do systems react. We kind of have 2 times, 3 times high watermark than the peak ever observed, and we kind of configure or prepare our systems to handle 3 times, 4 times of peak observed, and so that we'll be able to handle these volatile days, without any hitch.
Alexey, you mentioned that in 2009, on a bet, that you wrote the first proof of concept that would reliably transact messages in about 16 microseconds under load without losing messages. The rest, they say, was history.
Yeah, that was an interesting time when I ran a small high-frequency trading firm. We traded in the US and on the continental Europe and in London. And the exchanges in Europe were, I would say, In terms of their structure, they were ahead of the US because they had things like volatility auctions that we didn't get until LULD amendment. In terms of latency and velocity of trading, they were way behind. They were essentially database-oriented systems where, events could take 50 milliseconds to execute. They used to charge people to place an order, like penny in, penny out. But they were slowly realizing that something had to change, that the US was really leading the revolution. So they wanted to talk to high-frequency traders and find out what it is that they think. And it's during one of these conversations we had these sort of get-togethers where they would ask, like, what would you guys like? And we would say, well, for starters, maybe don't charge us to place an order because maybe we're trying to make markets there, so we want to place orders, a lot of orders, right? If it costs us money, it's a non-starter. And the other thing we talked about was latency, and we said, well, why are you guys so slow? Like, what is it that you're doing, right? 2 messages come in, can't you figure out if they match or not? It was very clear that they just had no idea how to approach it. They had like a cluster of 200 Windows machines running something .NET or other. Their best idea for improvement was to upgrade to the next version of Microsoft Windows. So I said, I guarantee you, and I had no idea of whether that was true or not because I had never written an exchange. As a high-frequency trader, basically you're trying to hit and run, right? If you crash, it's okay. You recover, download the latest data from the exchange. If you're an exchange, it's a very different story. You have to record everything that happened, and you can't have a situation where there is an outage or let's say we unplug a computer at a strategic time. You can't have a situation where you have reported that an event happened to one of the participants, and then you don't know that it happened. As a trader, I've actually had situations like that with exchanges, which told me that, not everything is perfect on the other side of the fence. And so this kind of added to my desire to just fix that. So I went back to the US after my trip, and it was August, and things were slow, and I just spent 2 weeks writing this algorithm for transacting data.
Not only does the exchange need to operate perfectly, market participants also need to be able to plug in and interact with our system. To a non-techie person, this seems like a fraught proposition. How do you test the exchange systems, and how do you ensure that there's minimal client downtime when you do it?
So testing is actually a lot of fun. And there is some perception in the industry, in the software industry, that real men write code, and then you have these testers, they didn't make it as programmers, so they're gonna test instead, right? They're gonna just run the programs. But actually correctly testing your program is a very difficult challenge. The reason it's difficult is because to test the program, you want to prove that the program works. In order to prove that something works, you need to enumerate the entire state space of it and then prove your assertion for every point in it. It's impossible. The state space of an exchange is so large that there's no way you can enumerate it. It doesn't matter how much computing power you have. You're going to wait until the heat death of the universe. You're still not going to be able to test it. So it is an algorithmic challenge. Your resources are limited. You cannot really totally prove that it works, but you have to, get some solid assurance. So we do things like we put 500,000 orders on one side of the book and then send one 500,000 share order on the other side that's going to match them all. That's like a mega fill. Or we try to just stuff the book with millions of orders to see if any component in the test is going to crash under load. Or we connect every single user in our test environment, and then every single user sends an order at the same time, and we see what the latency spikes are. Those are the kinds of tests that we write. It's a lot of fun to try to bring down your system.
Mayur, how do our operations folks feel when we sort of pressure test and red team against our own system?
Oh, they love it because they don't have to wake up when there is a problem. So to Alex's point, right, one of the things we need to worry about is what are the extreme conditions where sometimes not intentional, something malfunctions on the customer systems or something malfunctions on our end that can bring down the whole system. So for us, thinking of those scenarios and doing this is part of the creative mental exercise to keep the system running. The other thing which Alexi didn't mention, which is a big part of our test process, is doing replays where we capture all the data that is ever gone through our system across months and play it back at 2 or 3 times the rate at which it came in to exercise our platform and be reasonably confident that any change we have done or anything we have done to the platform, adding a new feature or any of those things, have not broken or anything that was already working. So those are the kind of things that add to our assurance cycle in terms of building new software. And one thing to keep in mind, right, we have to be ultra conservative, but we can be ultra conservative and still make progress by having these processes and tools to exercise and test.
Just to address your minimal downtime, our software, when we deploy our architecture, we have hardware redundancy as well as software redundancy, where there's a piece of hardware fails, you have a backup, you have a process A fails, you have its own backup readily available. We had our share of issues and we have learned from that and improved our testing tools. So playback is what Mayur mentioned is one of the tools which helped us immensely. And one of the things we always try to improve on is recovery time, like how quickly or automatically we can recover from a failure so that we can minimize the impact. Over the last couple of years, we have had a pretty good high percentage of availability, even with the increased volatility in the marketplace.
What's the biggest tech advancement and accomplishment during all of your times here that you've seen?
For me, the biggest advancement first is culturally having more people who understand mission-critical software, building that muscle or skill set in terms of developing production-grade mission-critical software. So that's the big cultural change. And we've kind of been able to, whatever we have learned in one part of the business, kind of globally inculcate that same culture across our acquisitions and any companies we have all over the world. So that's one piece. And the technological advancements, evolution, thanks to Intel and thanks to the networking vendors, the Junipers, Aristas, and others, Mellanox, all these vendors, we have taken all those advancements and applied them to our problems. And as those technologies have evolved and brought in the price performance and other benefits, we've kind of been right behind them in terms of adopting those technologies because we have such high leverage when we can do something much more efficiently.
For me, I would say it is seeing the scale-out approach work in the real world. Typically or historically, an exchange is some sort of loose collection of servers sitting in a data center talking over a network. At NYSE, the exchange is really a tightly connected group of computers that kind of form a mini supercomputer. That's really the best way of viewing it. And we don't even view the connection between them as a network. We view it as an interconnect, which is, there's some technical difference in terms of sort of the amount of routing or the amount of logic or hot pluggability that you may have there. But basically, to get 1,500 CPUs working as a single unit is the most interesting problem. It's pretty impressive.
To add to that, I think in terms of software development methodologies with agile and iterative approach, automation and tools, continuous integration and continuous delivery, the speed of delivery, time to market, the methodology which help us, there's a big change how things were and how we are now, in addition to the technological changes which Alexi and Mayur mentioned.
The world is increasingly going open source. And I know that given the intense security and scale of Intercontinental Exchange and the exchange business generally, that's a long road to travel from here to there. But what elements of the open source community make this a place where some of the most creative engineers can operate?
Like everybody else, we are big users of open source, be it the Linux operating system that runs on commodity hardware, to using all the standard web toolbox of HTML5 and other technologies, including Java, for building out our platforms. We also, on occasion, contributed back to open source based on some of the tools we have used, but being a highly regulated and running in a mission-critical, secure environment, we have to be very thoughtful and careful in terms of the tools we use, how we evaluate them, and how we manage them. So we embrace open source, but are much more thoughtful and cautious about it.
So as we wrap up, gentlemen, running the well-oiled machine that is ICE technology requires an expert team of engineers, computer scientists, data analysts, and more. Going back to our discussion on what makes the NYSE a tech company, what's your pitch to listeners who might be interested in joining the team?
My pitch is we run 12 exchanges, 6 clearinghouses, run the world's premier data platform. All of our products manifest itself in technology. If you want to build a scale-out, mission-critical piece of software, definitely think of us. We are one of the best in the world.
Yeah, just to add, we're building the next generation trading platform, which is highly scalable, high capacity, low latency, highly deterministic, the magnitude and scale of which is unparalleled, with the cutting edge technologies and best engineering practices focusing on automation.
I would simply say that it's the highest tech project that you could be working on if you went out to look for one. Right? Because the combination of real-time requirements, uptime, and the sheer low latency and scale of it is not to be found anywhere else. And for instance, web applications typically operate 10,000 times slower than we do on the transaction side. So that's my pitch. If you want high tech, this is what you want.
So even though the process may operate a lot slower than the highest high-frequency trading at the NYSE, if you're interested, go to standard old internet, intercontinentalexchange.com/careers, and find out all of the opportunities that are available at ICE, the NYSE, our 12 exchanges and 6 clearinghouses around the world. Thank you so much, Mayur, Sridhar, Alexey, for joining us inside the ICE House.
Thanks.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you for having us.
That's our conversation for this week. Our guests were Intercontinental Exchange's Chief Technology Officer, Mayur Kapani, the New York Stock Exchange's Head of Technology, Sridhar Masam, and the New York Stock Exchange's Chief Software Architect, Alexey Lebedev. If you like what you heard, please rate us on iTunes so other folks know where to find us. And if you've got a comment or a question you'd like one of our experts to tackle on a future show, email us at icehouse@theice.com or tweet at us at NYSE. Our show is produced by Teresa DeLuca, Kristen Kaz, and Pete Ash, with production assistance from Ian Wolfe. I'm Josh King, your host, signing off from the Library of the New York Stock Exchange. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next week.
Information contained in this podcast was obtained in part from publicly available sources and not independently verified. Neither ICE nor its affiliates make any representations or warranties, express or implied, as to the accuracy or completeness of the information and do not sponsor, approve, or endorse any of the content herein, all of which is presented solely for informational and educational purposes. Nothing herein constitutes an offer to sell, a solicitation of an offer to buy any security, or a recommendation of any security or trading practice. Some portions of the preceding conversation may have been edited for the purpose of length or clarity.